Right, let's move on to our next question, which is from Donna Lewis.
Good evening, everyone. My question here says, there have been 2 murders in Homerton recently. The crime figures tell a good story, but is Hackney really safer than it used to be? Thank you very much, Donna. Tunde, do you want to take that one first?
I'll address that question from my 2 different capacities. Firstly, as a criminal defence barrister, I think Hackney is much safer. The number of crimes that come through the borough that make their way to court has significantly reduced. The second capacity in which I address the question is from growing up in the borough. Now, when I was younger, we had a very big problem with gangs. Now, the problem still exists, but it's not on the same magnitude as it was in the past. Now, the issue that we have in relation to the murders that have happened in Homerton isn't a Hackney issue. It's a national issue, in fact. There's a problem with young men who are unable to communicate effectively and resort to violence. Now, that's something that happens in all boroughs and isn't exclusive to Hackney. And I believe the statistics accurately reflect that the borough is improving and is safer in relation to crime.
Okay, very confident about the reliability of crime stats.
Well, it impacts on me as a practitioner because it means less work for me. That's one reason. And the second reason is that I grew up with people that unfortunately are no longer here or are in prison. So I have knowledge and experience from witnessing things growing up and seeing how the borough has changed and how schemes have effectively reduced the problems. They haven't eradicated them. I'm not saying that. I accept that there is still that issue, but in comparison to what the position was 10 years ago, it's much safer.
Thank you very much. Cheryl.
I feel it's much safer. I mean, the Lower Clapton Road
the Murder Mile
used to be known as Murder Mile. And it was called that for that reason. I had a team of Ofsted inspectors come in about 15 years ago who said it's okay in your school, but we don't want to be out there on the street. And fortunately, it didn't affect the judgment. But it's changed. I think behaviour in school has changed. I think behaviour is much better in schools. I think young people are much more responsible. Yes, there is still crime. Yes, there are still tragic deaths and murders. But I think it's getting better. I do think it's getting better.
Okay, thank you. Jules.
Hard to build on what Tunde said, yes. I mean, there's something like 11,000 fewer crimes a year committed now than there were about 10, 12 years ago. And it's across the board, you know, whether it's burglary, street crime, car crime, theft from person, it's all dropped. But where we still have an issue is exactly where Tunde said, cohort of young black men who are disengaged. But there's a lot going on to reduce that and re-engage those people. When I say young, I mean we're not talking necessarily school age. Mainly we're talking late teens and early 20s, a lot of them. And we used to have in a borough, you know, sort of some of the highest ranked gang members in London, whereas Hackney has dropped right out of a league table that we never wanted to be in. Okay. So it is a much, but and this is the most important thing really for me and for the local authority, that cohort of young men is also, it's the cohort for whom this borough is not a safe place.
Okay, yeah. Absolutely. Good
People
point.
like me can walk through London fields at midnight, 2 in the morning, as I often do on my way home from council or whatever, late at night. Nothing's going to happen to me. But actually, it's young black men who are most likely to be the victims of the crime. And we should also concentrate on that as much as who the perpetrators are.
Thank you. Robbie.
I don't have much to add, but I did take a little look at crime statistics before I came out tonight, and I saw that there was a kind of year-on-year increase in violent crime across London, but also in Hackney. So perhaps there's something more going on. I mean, what we have seen is burglaries down quite a lot. You know, quite a lot of the crimes that people are focused on, the police have focused on, have gone down. But clearly, if police are kind of under-resourced, they're going to be focusing their activities on one area, and that might lead to kind of rises in other areas.
Okay, and Melissa.
I think, like with much of the debate around gentrification, there's a certain ambivalence, this link between security, crime, and gentrification. So for the young people we were working with, for example, and the people they were interviewing as part of the research, they would talk about feeling safer, particularly because people we're working with were predominantly young, black, from the different African and African Caribbean communities. And how they would describe it was feeling safer because of, in their words, there are more white professionals. And that, for them, is their perception of why it's becoming safer, the presence of this new cohort, or this sense that there's a growing cohort, a growing demographic in Hackney of young white professionals that's making it safer. But on the other side, then, the presence of that demographic is making them feel less secure in other ways, and particularly in terms of their place within Hackney and fears of displacement. So it's great that we can feel secure on one hand, but then again, for the reasons that's already been stated, there's other issues there as well.
Lovely, thank you. Now let's go back to our questioner, Donna. I'd like to know what you thought of what you've just heard, and what's your own answer to your own question. Do you feel that it's safer than it used to be in Hackney?
Well, having been a lifelong resident myself of Hackney, I actually do think that it's much safer than it was many years ago. I have to admit also that this question was given to me to ask on behalf of a chap who didn't turn up. But yeah, as a mother of a 16-year-old, you know, my heart sort of beats until he comes through the door. So I'm kind of yet to feel that it's as safe as I'd like it to be.
Okay, thank you very much. Any comments from the floor, please? Gentleman at the front, and woman there. Let's have those two. So should we go to you first and then you? Is that okay? She's just nearer the mic.
Hi. So I think we've all agreed that Hackney does feel safer, as it, much safer than it did, say, 15 years ago. But I was interested in the Mayor's response, because that really brought out that there's a group of young people who are massively being failed. So while everyone in this room feels safer, he pointed out that they don't, and that has to do with other reasons, such as the reasons we've already talked about, such as gentrification and qualifications of these people. So I wondered what more could be done to address that issue, make it safer for everybody.
Thank you. And can we come to the gentleman here, second row?
Yeah, I was chafing a little bit, hearing some of the reactions. It's unavoidable, because we're short of time, that we're going to dilute the comments which were about violent crime and talk about, burglary and so on. Two things struck me. I'd like to echo what the last person just said. I think there's a growing sense of unease. People possibly can't see futures for themselves in this place, and let's not forget that's why we're here. But secondly, having been a victim of crime as recently as the weekend, and seeing that the response is often pretty poor from the council, from the police, and from other agencies charged with it, I have a growing question, which is, if crime is falling so much, why isn't the capacity to deal with it coping a little bit better? And I'd be interested to know any.
Okay, it's a very good question. I mean, I'm just going to throw in my tuppence worth here, is that one of the things I have to do in my job is try and look at the crime statistics, and I've taken on board everything that everybody has said here on the panel, but I still don't believe them. I just don't think they're reliable. But I may be wrong about that. But how do you know? That's the problem a lot of the time. Okay, let's move on to our next question, which is. Sorry, you've got to be really quick. Otherwise, I'm going to throw you out.
I just said this is a hugely, hugely important issue.
Yes.
I mean, I think on your point, Dave, about reliability. Yeah. I mean, obviously, statistics are yeah, we can take them with a pinch of salt. But when it's year on year and such huge reductions, you can say, oh, they could be 10% out, 20%, 30% out. But actually, it comes to a point where you have to, you know, there is a certain distance travelled. Okay. On the what more could be done, the thing is, I think it's what we have already been doing, this kind of three-pronged attack, a couple of them, what we've been doing through youth work, what Cheryl and her colleagues have been doing in the schools, effectively has been turning off the tap, the supply of disaffected, disengaged people. It hasn't turned it off completely, but that's why we're seeing a lot of this drop in gang violence and gang membership and activity, because when you look at it over a large, the last 10, 15 years, because of the work that's gone on, and people are finding other alternatives. And a lot of the leadership of these of gangs, these were people who were failed by the education system of the 1990s, and it's been reduced through the success of the education system of the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And just finally on the capacity of the police, when the capacity of the police has been reduced in Hackney from 730 police officers to 600 by the swinging cuts that have been implemented in the Metropolitan Police, we are going to see a less and less of a response from the police in this borough than we have seen historically. I think that the cuts in the police have far outstripped the actual reduction in crime.
Okay, right. Now we really must move on because we're more than halfway through. We've only got through 4 questions so far.